Hello folks, I am privileged today to introduce to you Megan. She and I first met last fall. I was doing some stories for the Missourian and got to interview her as part of their Thanksgiving thanks parts of paper, and was really impressed with her all the way around. But what a wonderful story, and it's inspiring and educational, and I think you'll really enjoy it today. Feel free to ask lots of questions. But please show some warm welcome here for Megan Goncher.
I'm Megan Goncher. I'm 28 years old, and I'll just tell you a little bit about my journey with hearing loss. When I was born, my mother, or when she was pregnant with me, she had contracted a virus called CMV, and it wasn't real. I'm not sure if it was real. It's rare, but I'm not sure if they knew a lot about it or what it did, how it affected the child. It does not affect the mother. It affects the child. It can affect with birth defects of blindness, hearing loss, deafness, heart defects, and even brain damage and even death. And I received brain damage and the severe hearing loss. I grew out of the brain damage. It wasn't severe. And we actually didn't find out that that was the cause of my hearing loss until I was 26. So all these years, and they didn't find out that I had hearing loss until I was 5, and even then they weren't really sure how severe it was, due to the fact that when you do hearing tests on children, 28 years ago, 23 years ago, I guess I was 5, the technology wasn't there. It's there today, but they just weren't sure. So off I go to kindergarten, into mainstream school, and I wasn't. They just thought I didn't listen. My dad's like, this child does not pay attention. She doesn't listen. She doesn't behave. She doesn't, So it's kind of a little bit of. A little rambunctious, but when I was 7, they found out that I had a hole in my right eardrum and thought that that was probably causing a lot of the hearing loss, and so they repaired that, hoping that that would, bring my hearing loss back. It brought it back to about 90% of my right ear. My left ear still, it wasn't there. And so I just went through life, and I didn't know I couldn't hear. And it just progressively got worse. So that 90% wasn't there for very long. And then when I was about 16, I continued to play sports, and I was very active and all that. But when I was 16 is when my mom was like, that TV is kind of loud. And I was like, okay, whatever. So I hadn't had a hearing test in a while. And I went for a test, and they determined that's when they had determined that, they also did an MRI, that's when they determined the brain damage that I had had at birth. And which had developmentally delayed me until I was probably like 3 or 4. I backtrack, I'm sorry, so try to keep up. But, so when I was 16, I had the MRI and the hearing test, and they determined that I had I'd had progressive hearing loss, and it was worse. And then the doctors, they didn't really know what to do for me, and so they said, well, she'll probably just need hearing aids when she's around 25. Well, okay, so then I went along, and I was never really a very good student. I couldn't, because I couldn't hear, but I didn't know I couldn't hear. And so when you can't hear, your attention span is not there. You're always looking for, trying to pay attention to everything. And then I graduated high school and got a softball scholarship to Lindenwood, and my hearing just continuously got worse. I dropped out of college, but I didn't want to tell anyone that that was the case. And so when I was probably 21 or 22, it was bad. It was real bad. My mom came home one day, and she said, I couldn't even hear her. I couldn't hear anyway, but I couldn't hear her as loud as she was shouting over the TV. And so we, So one night we were sitting on the couch and going through the newspaper, you know, and they had the little flyers, and there was one for a hearing aid vendor here in Cape, and they were trialing new hearing aids. And I don't know what made me think of it, but I just thought, anything. I don't care. You know, I don't care that I'm 22 years old and someone's going to know that I have hearing aids. You know, they're not just for older individuals who have had progressive hearing loss or lost their hearing from disease or war or, you know, hunting or whatever it is. And so I said, Mom, they're trialing these new hearing aids, and she was like, let's go. She was like, anything, you know, whatever it takes. So that started when I was probably 22, and then I finally got my hearing aids when I was 23, and that changed my world. That changed my world so much. I don't even know how to describe it. Then when I was 20, then I had hearing aids, so that was 23, so then I had hearing aids for a couple years, and they just weren't working anymore. I thought, well, maybe, you know, the speaker on the hearing aid is clogged and it needs to be cleaned. Maybe I just need to turn the volume up. Maybe I need new hearing aids. New hearing aids are extremely expensive. Insurance does not cover them, so that became not an option. And then I went completely deaf. And that was really hard. When you haven't had hearing, you didn't know you had it, but then you have all this wonderful hearing, and you're hearing all these sounds, and then it's gone. And you have these assistive devices, and you're like, why aren't they work? You know, you people are telling me that they're hearing aids. You know, they're supposed to help me. And so then my niece was born, Nicolette. She's 4 now. But she was born, and the day she was born, I couldn't hear her. We were in the hospital, and like I just sat there with her in my lap, and I just stared at her. And everybody's probably like, why would you want to hear a baby crying, right? You know? But it's just, those kinds of sounds to me now are the most, it's like music, literally, to my ears. She was born, and I couldn't babysit her. My sister would not leave me alone with her, even if she was home in the room. You know, it scared her. She didn't know what I would and wouldn't be aware of. I don't blame her. And then when I was 26, that went on for a couple years. And then when I was 26, and I went from job to job. So I didn't have a job. I didn't really have any money. I was, you know, living with my parents, and you know, here all my friends are. You know, they're like getting married, and they've graduated from college, and they're having babies, and I'm just like, hey, like, you know, I don't know what I'm doing. And so then when I was 25, right before I went for testing for an implant, I started my own cleaning business, and I've been doing that ever since, which has been wonderful. And then when I was 26, I went for hearing tests, and I couldn't even hear my doctor during the consult, which that was not some big issue. That's what he was there for. And then I went for pre-op testing for my cochlear implant, and I wasn't sure I wanted to do it. And I just thought, why can't I just live this way, you know? And people do it every day. I mean, there's an entire culture of people, the deaf community, that live and operate every day. And although I didn't know sign language, so that was a little scary because I wasn't sure how to communicate with people. And then in May of 2011 is when I received my implant, and it's a 4-hour surgery. And it's really, honest, it's the best and hardest thing I've ever done in my life. Everyone, the day of surgery, you know, everybody was so excited. I was so overwhelmed, and you wait 2 weeks after surgery for the swelling to go down, and that's when you can put your speech processor on, and this is what it looks like. It looks like this. It looks like a hearing aid, basically, and then you have a little wire, and it's a magnet that hooks onto my head. And I started therapy, and I went through probably 8 to 12 weeks of intensive hearing therapy, hearing tests, listening to beeps. It was exhausting. There were days I didn't want to wear my speech processor. There were days I threw it up against the wall. I was frustrated. I was exhausted. I was in bed by noon every day, just from hearing everything, and my brain was trying to interpret all these different sounds that you hear every day that you don't realize you're hearing, that I was picking up. Speech was, everyone sounded like chipmunks, including my dad. So he sounded like my, 2-3-year-old niece at the time. And that kind of goes away, because you get used to the sound. And it's been 2 years now. It was 2 years, June 9th, since I had been activated, and it's just, I could not have imagined what it has done for me. It has built my relationships back up. I am back out in the community doing things. I can be alone with my niece and nephew. I can take them on trips. I can take them to the pool and swim with them. And it's really opened up my entire life. So, and it's rebuilt my relationships with my family, because I wouldn't want to go. My family we are so tight, and we're always together. We're always having family dinners and parties, and I'm enjoying that now, and that is just so much fun. And so I cry a lot. I cry a lot about it, because I just think, when I get frustrated with them, I'm like, I don't even want to be around them. Like my sister or something, we're just sisters. It's like, wait a second, And just a few short years ago, I couldn't even handle being in a crowd like that, or like here today with all of you. So it's just really been a total blessing. And if you know anyone that has hearing loss, severe hearing loss, or they're deaf, I would encourage you to encourage them to seek, information about cochlear implants, or even hearing aids. I mean, hearing aids at one time did change my life. They still change my life, because I wear one in my left ear. So it's just a godsend, and I'm thankful, and I'm glad I could share it with you today. So I hope I didn't bore you. Does anybody have any questions? Yes.
How do you compare the quality of your hearing with your implant as to before your implant, when you had the hearing aid?
It's phenomenal. It's a total difference. I'm hearing broader ranges. I'm hearing more clear. Speech is so much more clear. I went from 4% hearing to 92% just with my implant, without my hearing aid on my left ear alone. So
That's a miracle.
it absolutely is. The cochlear implant, I was telling Tim Arbeiter earlier, the cochlear implant is the only form of technology that replaces a sense. That is like beyond me. I don't even know. I mean, you can't like replace your sense of smell, or like they can't give you a new tongue. You know what I mean? Like they can't replace your nerves and give you a sense of touch. The cochlear implant replaces the sense of hearing, and that is phenomenal to me. So thank you. It is a miracle. You're right.
Do you sound different to yourself than you did internally?
Yeah, like earlier, yes, that's a good question. No one's ever asked me that before. Actually, this morning, I was saying something to a client of mine, and I was like, man, I kind of sound like a guy. My voice is kind of deep, And they were like, no, your voice is not deep. And I was like, okay, well, through this wire it is, I don't know.
Do you, with regular hearing aids, some people have difficulty with all the background noise and noise of other people. Is that something that the implant avoids, or do you still have something?
I have a remote control with my implant, and I can change the settings. I can change the spectrum of how far I'm able to hear. I can change it so that, like, if we're in a conversation, I can just hear you. So it's really, I'm a very lucky girl, that's all. Yeah, it is amazing.
How long, you give me the sense that when you first had it done, you were struggling because you were hearing all the sounds. how long did it actually to get yourself trained to where you could make sense of all of it?
Pretty much over that summer. That was in June, so probably 3 to 6 months till I was really fully comfortable, and it was just secondhand, you know, like it is to you all. It was just, sometimes I forget. I walk out the door every morning, but some mornings without my ears. I call them my ears. I walk out the door some mornings without my ears. I live alone, so and I don't like turn the news on in the morning or anything while I'm getting ready for work. So sometimes I'll walk out and I get in the car to turn my radio on, and I'm like, I should probably go home and get that. So yeah, and you know, sometimes like when I'm out and about with people, I'll forget. They'll ask me, and I'm like, oh yeah, I'm like, it's wonderful. So yes, it was probably 3 to 6 months before I was really fully comfortable and just like in the swing of things.
Can you talk a little bit about the group that you worked with to get the implants done with Cochlear America? Is that?
Oh yes, yes. Thank you. Thank you. I now volunteer with Cochlear America, the company that makes my implant, and they also make Bajas, which is for people who have one-sided hearing loss. And it's just really, Tim was saying earlier about his little girl who was recently implanted, and she's in St. Louis at CID this week taking a class, and but she was so happy that she was with people that are like her. And that makes me so happy for her, because I didn't have that. And my poor mom, I told her one day, I was at CID to do a speaking engagement, and I was sitting in the lobby, and here come this like little line of first graders, and every single child had an implant. And I called her after my speaking engagement, and I said, oh my gosh, Mom, I said, can you imagine what my life would be like had I gone to CID, or had I been a part of a group of individuals, a group of kids that were like me? And I felt so bad. The way I said it was, she was like, oh my gosh, I'm a terrible mother, you know, like I didn't, you know, do it. And I'm like, that's not what I meant. That's not what I meant. You know, but it was just, it's really amazing, the technology and the resources that parents have available to them if they do the work to figure it out for their child. And it is just, or even for themselves, you know, so that's really cool. I'm very excited for Faith.
What did you say the name of the disease was that you had that caused your problem?
CMV. Yeah, it's the abbreviation for the medical term, which is like this long. I don't know what that is, but so if you know, if anyone's interested in that, it's a virus that pregnant women can contract, and the only way to know that you've had it, or that if your child was affected by it, is through blood work, a blood test. And when I was 26, I was at Barnes, and my doctor ran 15, 20 blood tests to try to figure out what was going on, and it popped up, and he's like, that's it. So.
Why were hearing aids not an option for you as a child?
I don't know that they weren't an option for me as a child. They just weren't sure as to how severe the hearing loss was, and I was functioning okay, you know, among kids and at school. And so it's not that it wasn't an option, I just think, I don't know, maybe they just, I mean, my dad had said that for a long time he was sort of in denial. He still did everything he needed to do to try to get me, you know, to interact and to be okay, as he says. When I had my implant, he was really, that was really hard for him. As a father, he felt like he did do everything, but as a dad, he felt like he hadn't done everything that he could have. And so, and I, to this day, reassure him that was not the case. He did not want me to get the implant. He was scared. So, but now he's like, do you have that thing on? You know, like if I'm not paying attention to him, he's like, is that on? Do you need to turn that up or something? I'm like, shut up, go over there. I'm not paying attention to you right now, you know. My sister and I, you know, we're sisters, and we're a lot alike, but we're very different. And, you know, we bicker and disagree and stuff, and I just turn my ears off, and she's like, that's not fair. I'm like, I'm sorry, you know. So I was telling Darren and Tim that once I received my implant and through those early summer months after being activated, I never thought I would realize what a blessing it is to be deaf. Because I get to go home and I get to just have peace and quiet. You know, I get to relax and just recollect myself, and there are many, many people that don't get to do that. But there are 36 million Americans living with hearing loss or deafness that either don't want to do anything about it or don't know what to do. And so going back to working with Cochlear America, that's sort of our mission, to bring awareness to people about cochlear implants. Cochlear implants are not for everyone. Cochlear implants are, say, not for someone who's 45 years old and been completely deaf their whole life and having lived a deaf lifestyle and lived in the deaf culture. They're probably not going to be too keen on it. I've actually had deaf individuals tell me shame on me for receiving a cochlear implant.
What's the approximate cost for one of those?
I'm sorry.
Approximate cost.
The cost? It's pretty up there. It's around $80,000. That's about right there. Yeah, about 80. I was really fortunate though that I was introduced by my audiologist here in Cape Girardeau, Kathy Wellen, who is wonderful. She is the one who discovered my hearing loss, and she's worked with me my whole life. And she is the one who mentioned a cochlear implant to me, to my mom and I. Without her, I would not be here. We're like, well, what's that? What does that do? How much is that? You know, and she's like, well, you know, it's pretty pricey, but Megan would be eligible for our voc rehab, and that is for, since I own my own business, that is for individuals without health insurance living with a disability. They do all sorts of things for people with disabilities. They paid for my hearing test, my doctor's appointments, they paid for my surgery. I am beyond grateful to them. I will advocate for them for the rest of my life. I would not be here without them. So that's another great program.
You gonna write a book?
Am I gonna write a book? Mrs. Yates is like, yeah.
I was her 8th grade teacher.
She was my 8th grade teacher. You know, I have thought about that. I have been writing for the last couple years, so that's definitely something I've thought about. I mean, I guess people would find it interesting since you asked, so maybe I should go ahead with something like that. I don't know. I mean, we'll just have to see what life brings me.